On today's episode of Locked On Avalanche, if the Avs can't win a game in the preseason, can they even win a game in the regular season? Panic mode, panic mode, panic mode.
You're Locked On Avalanche, your daily podcast on the Colorado Avalanche. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Kidding, of course. All right, everybody, welcome to the Locked On, Locked On Avalanche podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Chris Maselli. With me, as always, Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. Thank you for tuning in, making it your first listen of the day. It's always appreciated. Make sure you're following us on our social media outlets, LOPN_Avalanche on Twitter, X, Locked On Avalanche, and Instagram and Threads. Questions, comments, concerns, and opinions, lockedonavalanche@gmail.com. And follow us on our YouTube channel. Hit subscribe, get notified when a new show goes live, and make sure you subscribe to our subtext. Link to that's in the show notes below. And when you do, you chat with Kyle and I one-on-one. We get your opinion, everything Avalanche related, which we share on this very podcast. All right, sir, we'll get into what everybody loves to talk about this time of preseason on if it needs to be this long. People hate it, but it has a purpose. So do we need to shorten it or just leave it where it is? We'll talk about that a little bit later. Where we're going to start in the first couple segments are going to be about what's going on right now with the Avalanche in the preseason. The roster is kind of taking shape because you have more cuts. There's still a few more to go, but you're still seeing, like we talked about in a previous episode, you're still seeing guys kind of take this preseason as to what it is and kind of making a name for themselves, or guys that we were hoping that could take a step up and do that. And you're seeing that like in each game. In this last game against Vegas, overall, just a slog of a game. It was just, it was ugly. A lot of preseason games are going to be ugly, but, again, you got a couple more starters. Nathan MacKinnon sees his first action. Mikko Rantanen sees his first action. Cale Makar. So that's cool. For, the last game, it was Sam Malinsky. He didn't play in this game. But for this game, it was Kovalenko, who was the guy that is taking, he's had a good camp, but this was kind of his stamp of a game. And he's the one when the game was over, even though it was 6-1, and there's not much to like about anything. He was the one guy where you were like, he really stood out in this game. He was impressive.
Yeah, and what better way to say happy 25 years, Ball Arena, than this poop cake that we give you against the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah.
But it was, yes, Kovalenko, impressive game. Even Bednar made comments about it. I don't know if you caught those, but he said he was pushing for that top 6, which is interesting to see. And yeah, with this preseason as a whole, you got your guys that are taking steps up, steps down. Hey, let's just go ahead and say it. Georgiev, midseason form.
We'll talk about him in a minute.
Yeah, it's great to see Nathan MacKinnon, Cale Makar back out there, and that one and only goal for Colorado. You saw that momentary flash of, hey, Colorado Avalanche hockey, let's go. And then that's it. They're done.
Yeah, I mean, that was their first power play of the game, and they scored on it, which the power plays looked good. But it's kind of a mix and match of a power play. What you see is not what the typical power play one unit, but regardless, it's looked pretty decent in the preseason so far. And the first one, yeah, that was a nice one. And that was with, finding Nathan MacKinnon's on your power play one. And can you imagine if you're, I always want to say, Inala.
Inala.
If you're him on that power play unit and you're like, it's just this easy to be on this power play unit. I just have to camp in the house and I can just rip one-timers from these guys. That'd be brilliant.
Yeah,
and then he gets sent down after the game's over.
I think his first name is pronounced like Yer Inala.
Yeri, yeah.
I would take that stat line of my first, like a preseason goal with assists from Makar and MacKinnon. I'll just put that up on my wall for the rest of my life.
Right, I know. So, but overall, this was. I don't say this much about Avalanche games, but this was a boring game, dude. And I know it is preseason, but hey, like you have Nathan MacKinnon out there for his first game, and Mikko and Cale. you could tell McKinnon was going about 75% speed. Mikko was probably going half that. Well, not half that. Maybe he's going like 50% speed. I think those guys were just out there, get some reps, not get injured. But there were moments where, if McKinnon had an angle, he would take it, but he wasn't going to like go all out and get himself injured. And I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I still don't care about the outcomes of these games. If people are panicked about like, oh, the Avalanche haven't won a game in the preseason, it still does not matter to me. It's individual performances. You're not, these are not lines that you're going to see. It is still, like Jared Bednar said, it is still finding out what works, who is taking the reins on stuff. You alluded to his comments on Kovalenko. That's kind of what you want to see, guys starting to step up individually. And now you start putting the things together. And I think he did say, now we're going to ramp it up for the last 2 games. You'll start seeing maybe more of what, there's still cuts to be made. So they're not going to be 100% what the lines are going to be, but more or less you would hope to start seeing like full lines and those guys getting kind of like reps in game speed, which you should see for the last 2 games.
Yeah, again, it's great to see like your big names out there, but it also kind of stings a little bit, and we'll get to it about the worth of these preseason games when you see like Nathan McKinnon heavy on that forecheck and then just kind of stop. There were a couple of those where he was like fighting the boards, you could see him just peel off where he's like,
I'm done.
Yeah, not now. And you could tell that he was just like, this is just garbage time for him. He's like, what do I need to really do right here? But you get to, again, you do see how things do work and how combos work. And guys that you have an eye on, you want to put them up in those high pressure situations, put them on those lines with like Cale Makar and Nathan McKinnon, see how they react. And you could see who does and who doesn't. And a name that we've talked about a couple times on cuts. If you just kind of want to see how things go. And if they do ramp up, at what cost? San Jose's won a preseason game and Colorado still hasn't.
Oh.
What does that mean? What does that matter? And Dallas is going around as the champions of preseason so far.
Yeah.
What does that get you?
What's the name of
lunch?
that? Yeah. What's the name of that trophy? You mentioned Georgiev, and we got to talk about him. Not a good game. But I always feel like with Georgiev, we are quick to jump to worst case scenario with him when he has a bad game. And I'm not trying to make excuses for him. I'm honestly not trying to do that. Maybe I'm trying to play devil's advocate for him, but I kind of get the feeling of if we are using the preseason for a number of things to get like those prospects some time to see who maybe sticks their head above water and says, hey, I'm going to make a push for a roster spot, to get guys like Nathan McKinnon just some reps, get them into game speed. Why can that not be the same argument for Georgiev too? Hey, it's a brand new season for him too. He's got to get back into game mode. But because there's a part of the fan base that just has some disdain for him, he gave up 6 games in a preseason game, and that's not acceptable. Why not though? Because he's got to get into the flow. We're already want to cut bait with him on a preseason game. I'll get there if he does this in the regular season for, the first couple months, but I'm not doing it for a preseason game. The guy needs to, he's just like everybody else where he's got to get into the flow of a season, and that starts in the preseason. No, he didn't look good. He didn't look good, but he's also just getting his season started.
All right, Georgiev fans, you got that? You heard it?
Mm-hmm.
Good. That it just didn't look good. It did not look good at all. And what we were talking about with people checking up and not NHL rosters playing in these preseason games, you would expect better than an .838 save percentage.
Sure.
And the thing that really like sets Avalanche fans off, me included, watching that game, these are the same mistakes that were made last year. And like the goal quality, it's the same. Like you see the shot, he turns around, all you're seeing is the number. He takes a sip of water, and he just like, oh, well, maybe the next one. And it's just like, you could see. And then when you have Nate, Mikko, and Cale back out there, you also are wondering what's going through their mind. Is this, oh, great, here we go.
I don't think so. They're not doing that right now.
No, it's because we talked about the inconsistency at goal, and
Mhm.
you would want him. We're talking about like possibly being the last season in Colorado.
Mhm.
Why not show up? Why not show out and just make that little extra? Like you want to get in game mode. I'll just justifying like maybe next time is not a mentality you want to adopt and build off of. Like you want to start making those saves and build on it. It only seemed to get worse.
Yeah, I mean, and this was his first full game because I think the last game he only played half. I think he split
Yeah.
time with Annunen. So this is his first game, start to finish. Okay, and again, like you let up 6 goals, they're not all going to be on you, and they're ones that I don't put on it. That Brandstrom turnover was god awful, horrible, and he did not have a good game. Brandstrom I'm talking about, but
Yeah.
that one goal was just glaring where he just could, that was like a quarterback just throwing an interception. You just do not see the guy that's just standing right there.
Yeah.
And it was just intercepted. And then it's just a free for all. And it's just goals like that are tough. Vegas did a very good job of taking away his line of sight. Really good job of doing that. And I would, there was a couple times that they had goals and I'm looking when they're showing the overhead cam and I'm like, oh, did they bunt? Like they were perfect, like not on crossing over into the crease of bumping him. Does he have to fight through that? Yes, he does. But Vegas, all I'm saying is Vegas did not make it easy for him. So those are the things that he is going to have to get into game speed on. And again, that's not all on him. Where's the defender to rub them off of him, to get them away from, in front of his line of sight? There didn't seem to be guys there to do that. But that's what preseason's for. You get these kinks out of the way and hopefully improve from it, because if you don't, then we're having a different conversation.
Yeah, and when it comes to Georgiev, you just go off body language, and you kind of want to see a little bit more when it comes to body, like his reaction time, his positioning. It just wasn't ideal. And if this was our first foray into the Georgiev experience, it would be a different story. But this was a lot of the bad times that Colorado Avalanche fans had to sit through when it came to his performance last year, and it just felt like, oh god, and especially on a year where this is the big weakness of the Colorado Avalanche is the goalie position. And it's more of the same that you got last year. It doesn't give you a lot of hope and faith. Like, yes, you can explain goals. Yeah, you can explain goals and positioning and this and that all day long. But when it comes to how the reaction, you could watch just in the replay of him just letting stuff go over his shoulder or just being in a bad spot or not. You want to see that cleaned up a little bit. And that's where it's always the takeaway on Georgiev is he's just not that next step kind of goalie, and you see that there, and that's just you want to see it improve, and I haven't seen it in a game and a half.
Yeah, but I think we're just going there too quickly right now. Let's hold off on it. Let's because we were all singing his praises at the end of the last season, how he turns it around in the postseason, and are we already there after a game and a half in the preseason? How that we're already back to turning the car around and be like, nope, he's looked
back
bad.
to Vancouver.
Come on,
or Winnipeg.
Come on,
the reference.
So, all right, but the roster is taking a little bit more shape. There are guys that are still remaining, guys that we obviously know will be, but there are some that are still holding on. Chances that they have of holding on until the final cuts. Let's discuss that coming up next. First, let's hear from FanDuel and NFL fans. You can start off this season with a big return on FanDuel. That is America's #1 sports book. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your very bets. And I know the Broncos are a favorite this weekend, if I am not mistaken.
Because they're in the Orange Crush jerseys, of course.
They are. I can't wait to see those things, man. Like, isn't that like almost a guaranteed win?
Yep.
If they're in those old unis like that, that's God. Why didn't they go with those, Kyle? Why not go with those? Not the ones.
Bo Nix will have 77 yards for LA.
Oh man, on 21 completions, I'll say. So yeah, they're a 2.5-point favorite right now. So go Broncos. All right. So you can get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So get over to FanDuel.com, place a $5 bet, and you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed over at FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. All right. Apparently some action going on in practice for the Avalanche on Wednesday. Miles Wood apparently checked Eric Brandstrom into the boards pretty hard. And he got a good old-fashioned spring training baseball scuffle. I don't think it was anything major, but some defensemen took offense to it, namely Calvin DeHaan, from what I heard. Excuse me. Got into it a little bit. I don't really think it was anything major, but just took exception to, hey, why are you doing that to our own guy? Brandstrom needed to be helped off the ice. He didn't return. I haven't heard anything the rest of the day on how bad it is, if he's okay, if he's going to be out a little while. But by the accounts that people were posting, that it was a pretty solid hit on him in practice. Is that a frustration thing of like, hey, we haven't, I mean, it was Miles Wood and he's, only, he is what he is. Like he's going to go 110% games or practice. And he's not involved with this. You're not getting mad in practice because you haven't won in the preseason. It's kind of where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
Or was it just practice and an unfortunate incident?
It's mathematical more than anything. You're telling me one Avalanche against one Avalanche is going to walk away without an injury? Are you kidding me? The Avalanche we're just prone for injuries at this point. Scott Steiner, this is a 33.3% chance of increased injuries. But no, I mean, it's nice that Miles Wood is getting out there and getting gritty. I guess this is part of the ramp up. But I mean, if this is the cost, I don't know.
Maybe it gets guys going or something, but you hope that Brandstrom is not hurt because of practice reasons, right? But practice? I don't know. So we'll see where that goes. As far as the roster goes, you did get another round of cuts for the Avalanche. Jack Acan went on waivers. Matthew Phillips went on waivers. Kelly Rosen went on waivers. Guys that went right down to the Eagles. Sean Behrens, who I thought had a pretty good camp. I didn't think he would make this team this year, but I thought he played well. He's one of those guys that's like, that's promising.
Yeah.
It's promising what you saw. Go have a solid year with the Eagles. Hey, you might even get called up for a few games if needed. Jean-Luc Foudy did go down. Inala, who we said he scored the goal, and then he went down. Jason Megna, Trent Miner, Jason Poland went down, and Matthew Steinberg, who seems like they were very high on him and how he played for this postseason. I didn't really see it myself, but some comments that Bednar made was they were kind of happy with him. So maybe just a name to remember for someone in the future, because they seemed to be happy with how he played in training camp and preseason. Could be one of those guys that they call up for whatever reason. So another round of cuts, and that leaves you with, I believe, 30 guys left. So still one more to go.
Yeah, you had Matthew Phillips, who led the preseason in scoring. He was the first goal of the preseason.
Yeah.
And Anala was the last.
Mm-hmm. And then, so don't score if you're if you're playing for the Colorado Avalanche in the preseason, because you will get sent down.
And Behrens did have that really rough 50-50 screen that allowed a goal on Georgiev against the Knights. It was kind of rough, and I was like, oh, I wonder if that's going to hurt his causes. And then you see him cut. Like I felt like he did look pretty good in preseason, and you heard positive things out of camp. So that one was surprising, but of course the big name on this list is Foudy. And
for us, it is, because we're Foudy guys.
You're kind of like, well, maybe you'll see him at some point this year, especially if Miles Wood is continuing this in practice. You'll have to see him at some point. But no, it's kind of another disappointing. Will kind of throw up your hands like, well, maybe next time.
I think if he can, because he was riddled with injuries last year, so if he can stay healthy, I think they'll bring him up at some point when needed. So I think all is not lost with him. Behrens is just, there's no room for him right now. You look at the 8 remaining defensemen, who again Jared Bednar kind of teased they might go with 8 defensemen on the roster to start. But you have your usual suspects with Taves, Makar, Manson, Girard. You got Brandstrom, DeHaan, Shillington, and Malinsky. So kind of what you expect for defense. We'll see where that goes if they do keep 8 on the roster to start. Over on the forwards, there's guys that are still there. TJ Tynan is still there. Chris Wagner. Andres Pavel is still up.
Which is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Been like Tynan has showed out, but Pavel's been a little quiet in this preseason. So I'm interested. I'm curious what they're working on with him still being up.
Yeah, they just obviously seem to like TJ Tynan, and he's got a history with Bednar too. So, but Pavel, it seems that they like him as well. Ivan is still there. They really like him.
Yeah,
they really like this guy. I don't think he's someone that makes the final cut. I'd be surprised if he does, but that's one where it's like, okay, Ivan is still there. How we were saying with Oscar Olausson and Jean-Luc Foudy is still up. Well, now Foudy is down and Ivan is still up. So you're getting kind of like this hierarchy of prospects on just based on how the cuts are going. Is that a precursor to when they do call up guys? Is Ivan now above Jean-Luc Foudy when they need to call someone up? Or, I mean, you still have TJ Tynan in here too, so that could be a call up. Chris Wagner, obviously, it could be so. But you're kind of like power ranking these guys on how they were sent down, and you have Olausson kind of at the bottom now, and now you can slot Jean-Luc Foudy in somewhere, and the guys that now are still above him, guys like Tynan, Wagner, Pavel, and Ivan. So it's kind of, I don't know if that's the correct way to do it, but that's just kind of how I'm viewing this. Like if you made a cut past another guy, you clearly are in better graces with the coaching staff if you didn't get cut earlier.
And I kind of think of it as like they've seen enough. They've seen enough of the Foudy experiment. And with Ivan, he's continuing to build and mold. Like he's been a fascinating watch this preseason. Tynan has been playing above what I expected, and it's been fascinating to watch throughout preseason. So, and Wags, he's just there because like the NHL experience. Like he's the automatic, like he's usually the guy that gets called up with an injury or sickness on game day. Wags is usually there. But I like to see, they want to see more what they can get out of Ivan, and honestly, TJ Tynan, because I think both of those are going above what they should on a continuous level, and they want to see what else they can do.
Yeah. And interestingly enough, just, position-wise, 8 centers that are still on the roster. I know guys can play multiple positions, but as for their primary position, 8 of them are centers.
That's Galaxy Brain. We have learned from the 2C.
Yeah.
It's like the drummer for Spinal Tap. You cannot have too many.
Right. As far as the preseason goes, you did hear from Commissioner Bettman that around the new year you're going to start having CBA negotiations begin, which is the CBA ends in 2026. So they really want to get ahead of this thing and maybe have this thing buttoned up by like the end of the season. That would be fantastic to have everybody's mind at ease a full year before it. Like that doesn't happen anymore. Like, and it should. It really should. I don't feel like the union and the league are the gap in previous negotiations is so far where they can't come to an agreement when you're giving themselves a year and a half head start. So one of the things that could get discussed is preseason. And you always hear this in every single sport, maybe with the exception of baseball. You don't really hear it in baseball for some reason.
Yeah.
I think people just the season is so long anyway. We'll just accept however long the preseason is. But you got it in football, and they adjusted it. I don't really pay much attention to basketball. I don't know if they complain about it in basketball, but they probably do. They complain about everything in basketball. The players do anyway. So I'm sure they complain about the preseason. In hockey, I don't really hear too much from the players. You always hear from the fans that the preseason is too long. What camp are you in? Should it be shorter, or is it fine the way it is?
It needs to be cut in half. This for 2 reasons. Well, This will eliminate the Macklin Celebrini and the Patrick Laine situations that we're having to go through.
Well,
And
okay, go ahead.
if you save these little situations for them, and you eliminate the back-to-backs in the season. You can stretch out your regular season a little bit where you have some more room to play, where you're not having to do these back-to-backs for no reason at all.
See, I don't think it will eliminate all of the back-to-backs because teams are playing 10, 11, 12 back-to-backs over the course of a season. So getting rid of 2 or 3 preseason games is not going to fix that. You need to, kind of stretch out the regular season or take games away in the regular season to do that, which is not going to happen because all they're going to do if they take preseason games away, they're just going to add regular season games. They're going to add a couple more regular season games. So it's not that's issue's not going to get solved. We talk about collective bargaining. That's where that needs to get solved and figure that out somehow. I get that. You mentioned, Macklin Celebrini got injured. Who's the other one?
Patrick Laine.
Laine got hurt. That was an ugly one. And you've seen some just vicious hits in the preseason. Why would that stop? Like, I mean, you're just carrying over into the regular season earlier than you probably should be, and maybe guys are not fully ready for the regular season. And that's another reason that you do have a preseason is to get guys reps and get guys into shape. If you just eliminate a couple of games, was that going to prevent Macklin Celebrini from getting injured?
It wouldn't sting as bad if it was an actual on the books loss. Like if it was actually for something.
No.
Okay, actual regulation in the history books game that the stats log, the wins and losses matter, and points do matter. I think it would not feel as in vain and probably not raise the conversation. If this happened regular season, like opening night with Celebrini and Laine, you're like, that's hockey, baby. But in the preseason, you're just like, what are you doing?
I have a different vibe on that. I have a different take on that. Like the fact that it happened in the preseason, now like his starting recoup time is preseason time. It's not regular season time. So what he's missing is preseason games now. It's not game 1 of the regular season, and now he's missing regular season games.
Let me flip this on you.
Mm-hmm.
Gabe Landeskog's first game back is a preseason game, and the knee is not there.
That's totally. I mean, that's different though, man. Because he's coming back from is a 2-year injury. Celebrini is he's a young.
But you want to see Gabe make his way on. Game's not in jeopardy. He's working his way back. Here's his first preseason game, and it's not there. And then he doesn't get to play regular season hockey. And you're like, different. If I could just see him play one game. That's what Sharks fans are saying with Celebrini. Like, if we could just see him play in the regular season, those guys that bought game 1 opening night tickets to see Celebrini will not. And Laine, I mean, that's an attraction.
And Laine one hurts.
So, I mean, it's that same thing where it's like, I could have went. There was 45 people in preseason against the Knights in Ball Arena the other night. Like, do we want to start watching that? Because you never know who's going to go down in these games that don't matter.
I mean, or should you? I mean, you can't really do that. I was going to say you should, tell players, let's take it a little bit easier in preseason games. But then they're not playing the real game. They're not showing up for how they really play.
It's hard to moderate that. Like even in all-star games, like you still get chippy and stuff.
Sure. I mean, you watch that Rangers and Devils game, the preseason game. Oh my God,
Rimpe's ready.
That was regular season riots right there between those two. I mean, if you can't tell by how I'm trying to talk to you about this, I think it's fine the way it is. I don't think we need to eliminate any and it's not everyone goes to the injury part. Everybody, and that's a factor. It is a factor, but I feel like this is needed for coaching staffs to really see what you have. And prospect pools are deep for some teams. You have a lot of guys you have to take a look at. If you're only giving coaches 2 or 3 games to look at a full roster of guys, that's not doing anything. That's not doing anything for the coaching staff. That's not doing anything for the players. they're not getting involved. They're not getting some NHL time. Yeah, maybe the guys they're going up against are not the best, but look what happened with the Avs in Dallas the other day. That was a good test for some of those young players that they might not get that opportunity for another full year. So I'm more of the mind of like, you need preseason games. I think 6 is fine. If you take any away, honestly, I'd take 1 away and just make it a even 5. But I think they're useful. They're from a fan perspective, they're boring. And the only reason we want to get rid of preseason games is just to get to the regular season faster because we're impatient. And I get that. But from a franchise and a team perspective, they're valuable. They're really valuable. So I think 6 is a fine number, and I don't really feel like they need to eliminate any. Will they, though? Maybe. I think it is on the table that they will.
Yeah, as I'm sitting here and I'm hearing you go on about the importance of preseason, this just hit me. Why don't we the central teams all collect, kind of do it like the rookie camps? Just do, because that Vegas game, once it got about midway of the second period, you're just kind of ready for the game to be over. Do a 15-minute Avs in Utah, and then at the break, and there'll be Avs and Stars, and then just like have all your
You mean like everybody in like one building and just do like a round robin like live,
and just kind of have it more controlled, and like you understand what preseason is. Nobody cares about wins and losses. It's more situational and scenario based, and you want to see how people react. Get all your games out of the way. Just shorten the games. Make them like 2 15-minute halves. Get out and get all of them done in that weekend, and just do the rest of them as camps and do your cuts that way. But to stretch it out this long, like we still have 2 to go. Yeah. We're ready for NHL action. And with the Avs as depleted as they are, with Landy and Nuke still hanging out there, you want your team as healthy as possible, and you still don't have Lehkonen.
Right. So, and that's another reason why, like, hey, if you have guys that are injured, the longer you can push out this preseason, the longer they have to heal. And they're not missing regular season games now because we wanted to get the season started earlier. I don't know. So think of it this way, right? My son, he's 5 years old. He's in kindergarten. The school district that we're in is like the last remaining school district in the state that does half-day kindergarten. That's like when I was a kid, I did half-day. I don't know if you did.
Were you homeschooled my whole life?
Okay, all right. So you did no day school,
all days.
You're telling me, yeah. So half-day kindergarten when I was young was the standard. As time went on, it is now full-day kindergarten. But where he goes, the school district is so big, they do half-day kindergarten. I bring that up because when I tell people that, they're like, "Oh my God, they don't do full day kindergarten." I'm like, "Well, no, I don't really think it's that big of a deal." Well, they should be doing full day kindergarten. What 17 or 18-year-old do we talk to that maybe is like misbehave or something like that, or maybe not as seasoned in math or something like that? And do we turn and say they only had full day kindergarten? Those problems would have set themselves up and they'll be fine. When the season is towards the end of the season, do we ever turn back and say, if we only had 3 games in the preseason? No, we never do that. It's a now problem. It's a now issue. And as soon as the season starts, by the time we get to American Thanksgiving, nobody's talking about this topic anymore. Nobody is. It's just because it's right here, right now, and we want the season to start. So by the end of the year, we all forget about it. And then when the preseason kicks back up again, we talk about it again. So that's my analogy, is when a kindergartner who's in half-day kindergarten gets to be a teenager, we never look back and say like, man, if they only had full-day kindergarten, they would be whatever. And the same goes for preseason hockey. If we only shorten the preseason hockey at the end of the year, we never talk about it. That's where I'm at.
Well, I will counter that in closing with, if we are getting ready to start the season, we talk about Celebrini, we talk about Line A, and we talk about Mikko Rantanen going into the boards, tweaking his knee after ramping it up.
Look, man, like it's gonna happen. If you have 3 preseason games, someone's gonna get hurt in those 1, 2, or 3 preseason games. It's a part of the sport. You can't do anything about it. You can't eliminate the preseason altogether. It stinks when it happens. I mean, if you had shortened the preseason, Line still would have got hurt. You can't do anything about it. So
you're eliminating the possibilities of it happening for something that doesn't matter. Like if it happens in the season,
but I think it does. I think the preseason matters. It matters like I'm looking at it from the mindset of a coaching staff. It matters to a coaching staff. Doesn't matter to us. Doesn't matter to the fan base. Well, I mean, it matters to us because we talk about the team all the time. But like to the typical fan, they don't care. But I think it matters. I threw the question over on subtext quick. We'll end with these guys. Craig says, I wouldn't mind if it were shortened by 2 or 3 games. I do like seeing what the prospects can do. I sort of think that there should be stronger penalties for things done in the preseason. The fighting in some of these games seems pretty pointless to me.
Agreed.
I mean, it is pointless. But again, if that's what you're there to do and a team wants to see that, it's unfortunate, but that's what's going to happen. Coy says, shorten, way too many injuries. I feel that the point of preseason, giving prospects ice time to see firsthand what they can do, can be done in less games.
Agreed.
Sure. I mean, but if that's all you're doing, and then you're not giving your regular starters any time, they're just starting game 1 with nothing. I don't like that either. I get what he's saying with that, but I don't like that aspect either.
Mikko did a couple years ago, holding out on his contract the entire full year season. So,
Madam Battleaxe, I think it's fine where it is. Thank you, Madam Battle. Finally, somebody.
I thought she'd be in my corner.
No. I mean, at least they're warming their legs up and getting their rookies on the ice, and it's not so long that we are pulling our hair out. So yeah. And then Vargar, yes, do 4 games. No rules on how many NHLers are in the lineup. Yeah, they do have some rules for how many you can play and all that stuff, but that could be something. Get rid of that. So I know most people, I know I'm in the minority here of wanting to keep it just where it is. But ask yourself that question. Do you want to shorten it just because you want regular season to start quicker? If the answer to that is yes, then I can't agree with you. Is it the injury question? Okay, I can kind of see that, but injuries are still going to happen whether you have 1 game in the preseason. It's still going to happen.
I'd rather it happen in the regular season.
You're all wrong. Everybody's wrong. So I don't even care. All right. Well, fire away in the comments section and let's get your takes. So, all right, that's going to wrap it up for today. So thank you everybody for tuning in and making this your first listen of the day. That is always appreciated. He is Mr. Shaggy Von Doom, Kyle Sullivan. I am Chris Maselli. This is the Locked On Avalanche podcast, and we are one day closer to getting Sidney Crosby in an Avalanche sweater.